UK. Hello, good evening. As no doubt you'll be reading in the papers tomorrow, 3 men have been convicted and sentenced today for some of the cruelest crimes that we've dealt with on Crime Watch. 3 years ago, amid a great deal of violence, an assistant bank manager was taken hostage with his family near Kelvedon in Essex. Then last year, the same men used the same violent technique to rob a Tesco supermarket in Ipswich. This time they burst in upon a family in Colchester.
Keep your heads down. 6-4. Everything's okay, we're in.
It was those scenes of intimidation in the house which prompted viewers to name the man with the radio and the German accent. It turns out he's actually a Yorkshireman. Other parts of the reconstruction brought in other detailed information, and as a direct result, 3 days after those scenes were televised, a flat was raided in South London. In the garage was a shotgun. And later on, a small arms cache was discovered hidden underneath the kitchen sink. The suspect had left home, but when next day police caught up with him, he told them, "You've been watching too much television." 3 more arrests soon followed. Today, the gang was sentenced to a total of 65 years.
Well, our first case tonight involves an elderly couple and a middle-aged man who for several years seems to have been obsessed with some kind of grudge. Harold Gardner-Wheeler was a solicitor in Folkestone, where he'd been involved mostly with the bread-and-butter work of conveyancing and divorce. For more than 30 years, he and his wife Marjorie have lived in a remote Kent farmhouse near the village of Stelling Minnis.
I had always been interested in farming, and in 1959, when Wilditch Farm came on the market, we decided to buy it. My idea was that I would have something to interest me in my retirement.
My first impression for having to live in the country, I thought I'd be very nervous, but I soon settled down, and when we started getting animals on the farm, I found I had a great love for animals.
At the age of 81, Harold finally retired last year to work full-time on the farm with his wife. On the afternoon of Tuesday the 15th of September, a local hotelier, Richard Napper, was walking his dog in the woods.
Can you tell me how to get to Madam's Wood? I'm looking for a house.
He stopped me and asked for the name of a house, which I didn't know. And he said it was near Madam's Wood, so I directed him up the top. I thought he seemed quite a normal gentleman, his late 40s, early 50s. Nothing outstanding about him at all.
Oh, I see, yeah.
The scooter was an old-fashioned moped.
Madam's Wood directly borders the Gardner-Wheelers' farm.
Can I help you?
Yeah. Have you got any maps of the Stelling Minnis Bossingham area?
Yes. Any particular part?
The woods.
I remember him coming in because of the area that he asked for, which was very heavily wooded. We don't always have all the maps for that particular area.
Yeah, I'm looking for Madam's Wood.
There was nothing suspicious about him at all. He was stockily built, with a fairly weather-beaten complexion, balding, slightly scruffy, rather workmanlike in appearance.
5 days later, this witness encountered a similar-looking man.
I'm sorry.
We startled each other. He said he was sheltering from the rain.
Hence the plastic carrier bag he was wearing over his hat. The witness remembers they stood chatting about dogs for a minute or two.
Well, cheerio then.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I saw something on the ground behind him. It looked like a bag. I assumed it was his. When I thought about it later, it occurred to me that he was trying to hide the bag.
From where he was, the man would have had a clear view of Harold and Marjorie's farm. 45 minutes later,
Here you are, Jeremy. I've been walking in the woods in the rain. I'm soaked right through. I don't suppose I could shelter in your barn, could I?
Yes, that's all right.
Where is it?
Just over there.
Oh, right. Yeah, thank you. Oh, don't worry, I don't smoke.
The impression I got was that he was perfectly genuine, that he had been walking in the woods, had got wet and was very tired.
he was in the barn for about 2 hours.
I was just going to thank your husband for his hospitality.
Oh, that's not necessary. My goodness, you have got wet.
Yes, I got soaked.
While I was talking to him, I noticed he had bright blue jeans.
Well, I think it's clearing up a bit now. I think.
Yes, I think so.
I'll be on my way.
Yes. Okay.
And I noticed he had black round-toed boots with a silver or a metal rim round the front.
I was in the kitchen getting ready to go out to help with the milking, and suddenly the door burst open and a man appeared, and I found myself looking into the barrels of a double-barreled sawn-off shotgun. I received a blow on the head and fell backwards. The man bound, gagged me, and there was immediately a shot, and he said, "This is for real."
I heard a scream. I came down to the house to investigate.
Harold!
And I thought, this is just like something from television. He then tied up my hands and showed me the door where he had fired the gun and said to let you know that I mean business. And he then said, I will take you upstairs. And I asked him, where is my husband? He said, don't bother about him. The dog had been barking all the time, and he was getting very irritated and swearing about the dog. And I said to him, don't worry about it, it's only a puppy. Shortly after that, he went down the stairs, and the next minute there was a big bang and silence. I knew he had killed my dog.
Don't look at me. I've killed your dog.
What's going on? What's all this for?
This is about revenge. You buggered up my son's life.
I don't know what you're...
The attacker said his son had been divorced some time ago and had suffered financially as a result. The man apparently believed Harold had been a solicitor on the case and was therefore holding him responsible for the son's misfortunes.
He must have been in the house for over 2.5 hours. Just before he left, he said, well, I've taught him a lesson, so I'm going now.
I had 13 stitches put in my head, and I had a severe cut on my face. I was taken to the Kent and Canterbury Hospital, where I remained overnight.
It's no good. I can't box myself in the house, and it just, you know, we carry on as usual, really, with the farm. You've just got to carry on looking after them. Can't neglect animals because of this. And it's not going to make me either.
Well, Mr. Grace, they seem to be a pretty resilient couple. Are they actually recovering now?
Yes, remarkably well. They are a lovely couple, and we're pleased that they are coping so well.
Now, what about the motive for this? What about that long grudge the man said he'd harboured? Do you think that was the case?
We are keeping an open mind, but it just does seem to have a ring of truth about it. The grudge was about Mr. Gardner Wheeler acting as solicitor for the attacker's son-in-law or daughter-in-law.
And a bungalow or something was lost?
Yes, he blamed Mr. Gardner Wheeler for losing the son's bungalow.
So if he's been obsessed with this grudge for so long, do you think it's likely that somebody's going to know about it? He'll have told somebody?
Yes, I feel sure that he has told somebody, whether it's a relative, a neighbour, or somebody that he does know.
It doesn't sound as though he'd have kept it entirely to himself. How much do you actually know about the man?
Well, we believe the man is in his 50s. He's white. He's about 5'7" tall, stocky build, ruddy complexion.
He is older than he actually looks in that artist's impression. So if you put that description together with the grudge, the old scooter or the moped that he was riding, and the fact that he seems knowledgeable about dogs, perhaps that's somebody you'll recognise. If so, please do give us a ring. It's 081 811 8181 here, or you can ring Mr. Gracie's colleagues direct in Folkestone, and that's 0303 850055. That's 0303, the code for Folkestone, 850055.
Now here are Detective Constable Jackie Hames and Superintendent David Hatcher with a gallery of faces you might recognise in this month's photo call.
If you're selling a car at the moment, then you might come across Bruce Alistair McMillan. 6 months ago, he set up Rufford Motor Company in Ormskirk, Lancashire, buying and selling cars. He called himself Peter Scott. The company placed adverts in the local press. A number of people responded and were so impressed that they handed over not only their cars, but all their ownership documents. In just over 5 weeks, 70 cars worth more than £500,000 had passed through the hands of the Rufford Motor Company. Unfortunately, none of the owners has yet received any payment. Bruce Alistair McMillan went missing at the end of June. Do you know where he is now? He may be using a false name and sometimes wears glasses. He's 38, around 5'10", with light brown greying hair. So call us tonight if you have any information.
Jewellers in Henley were shocked when this convincing customer turned out to be a crook. On Tuesday morning, 30th of June, he went into the shop and asked to look at expensive watches. He spent a long time browsing before finally deciding on one he liked. Then, while still wearing it, he ran out. The shop assistant chased him up a nearby alleyway, but stopped after being threatened by an accomplice. Do you recognise the robber? He's in his mid-20s, around 5'10", with short dark hair. He spoke with a slight Birmingham accent.
If you run a small guest house, you may have come across Alan Francis Goodin. We'd like to speak to him in connection with a series of car thefts and deceptions. Over the last 6 months, he's been travelling across the country, staying in Dorset, Essex, Kent, North Wales and Norfolk. Described as very charming, he persuades hoteliers to lend him money. He's 42 and 6'1". He has a scar by the side of his left temple and a fading tattoo on his left forearm which says Lynn and Haley. He's known to use several aliases, among them Alan Lucy, Alan Parkinson and Alan Hutton. If you know where he is, please call us now.
Do you recognise this customer seen here at Comets in Edinburgh last February? Computers and fax machines were bought using a stolen cheque and Visa card. The man may have information about this and 41 similar frauds which have taken place across Scotland and netted over £20,000 worth of goods. He's Asian, 30 to 40 years old, 5'10", and although most of the offences were in Scotland, he had an English accent. If you know him, or you can help with any of our other photocall faces, please call us now.
And the number is ever 081 811 8181. That's 081 811 8181. And in fact, people who rang in after photocall last month, excuse me, have taken police inquiries several steps forward on every case. 60 people rang with help on the case of the expensive Rolex watch stolen from a jeweller's shop in the West Midlands. Several names were put forward for the 2 men involved, and 2 of those calls have given police reason to hope there'll be an arrest before long. We'll keep you informed. 31 callers rang to offer names for the fraud case in Reading. One name came up more than once, and it's believed the man has now been identified, so inquiries are proceeding very well there. And the largest photocall response came for the New Zealand police investigation into a sexual assault. 104 people rang with sightings of the man they were looking for, and 10 of those calls were particularly useful. For legal reasons, we can never give you as much information as we'd like in these early stages. All we can say at the moment is that police are now hopeful of finding him.
Often on Crime Watch, we take on cases that at first seem impossible to solve. In fact, generally, detectives only come to us when their inquiries have drawn a blank. So the programme's 1 in 5 success rate is with crimes that are hardest to crack. Even so, our next case must be one of the most difficult we've covered. The reason? Well, we're asking men who've been to prostitutes to call, and people who've been dealing drugs. The question is, will they care enough about a murder to call in? A lot of people have cared, and so, with considerable courage, almost everyone you'll see in our reenactment is the real witness. On a slope at Norrid Edge is a beauty spot called Warren Point. It's a half-hour drive from Leeds and Bradford, and it's popular with ramblers.
I was in the woodland looking for wild fungi that my family and I like to eat, and after about 15 minutes being unsuccessful, I was on my way back to my car and stumbled across the remains of a human being.
The body was lying in a natural hollow in the ground over which branches had been placed. It was badly decomposed, but was still identifiably a woman in her early 30s, fully clothed, with stab wounds to the chest and back. After 2 weeks, it was identified as Yvonne Fitt. For 10 years, Yvonne worked as a prostitute in Leeds and Bradford. This is Manningham in Bradford, where most other women working on the streets knew Yvonne well. She was one of the few black prostitutes here, but she'd not been seen in Manningham since summer. She'd been arrested more times than members of the Vice Squad could remember, among them PC Ingrid Cannon.
I'm here.
I'm not doing anything, I'm waiting for someone.
You always say that.
Look, arrest her down there, it's not my turn.
I've known Yvonne for some time. She's quite a bubbly sort of a girl. She was always full of fun and laughing. She'd never had any nastiness in her or anything like that.
But you know that lad on the Vice Squad? I don't know, I fancy you.
The sort of brash front that she always put on, it did seem to be a bit of a front to me because I think she was quite shy and lonely inside, really. I always got the impression that Yvonne didn't really want to work in the red light area. She was working there just to provide herself the means to live.
Despite her lifestyle, Yvonne was still close to her family in Leeds. She was one of 7 children.
How much are they?
She's £8.
£8.
Sometimes she don't come for sometimes 2-3 months. And when she does come, she turn up with a bundle of flowers, a bunch of flowers. Sometimes 3-4 bunches. And I always say to Yvonne, I say, Yvonne, don't spend so much money on flowers, you know. And she says, Mum, nothing is too much for you. People told me that Yvonne was on the game, that they see her standing about. And when I confronted Yvonne, Yvonne said, oh no, Mum, there must be mistaken, not me.
But by December 1991, things were going badly wrong in Yvonne's life. She'd often taken drugs, but was now heavily addicted to crack cocaine. She was anxious and becoming paranoid, or perhaps there was some basis for her fear. At any rate, she moved to Chapeltown in Leeds to stay with Alison Drake Lewis.
It's really good of you to put me up, you know.
Look, any time, okay?
But I can't go back to Bradford. There's people there that'll do me in.
She was very nervous. She was very on edge.
I've got into some debt and I owe some money, right?
She mentioned on several occasions that somebody was obviously going to find her one day and she was going to come to some harm.
I'm being followed. I'm sure someone's watching me.
For 5 months from last Christmas, Yvonne disappeared. Do you know where she went to live or work? Your call will be treated with the greatest possible discretion.
Thank you.
Sometime in May, at the Duncan pub in Leeds town centre, Yvonne was back.
Hello, how are you?
I'm really depressed and I feel terrible.
You don't look right. When Yvonne walked in, I was very shocked.
No money.
Didn't spy by Flanagan.
Yeah, thanks.
It wasn't the Yvonne that I knew.
Anyway, it might be better later. I'm meeting someone.
Are you coming back in then? Me and Yvonne were like best mates. If you asked her for it and she had it, she'd give you it.
All right.
You want to go see a doctor, Yvonne?
If I get a chance, I'll go later.
Come on, I'll let yourself go. See you later. All right, I'll see you later, Yvonne. Bye, love.
Yvonne left at around 7, but 3 hours later, at 10:15, Gail noticed she was back.
She was completely different to what she were early. She were laughing, she were joking. The man were about 5'5", chubby, white to grey hair, very smartly dressed, and I've never seen him since.
This man was seen again with Yvonne 2 months later. If it was you, or you know who it is, please call. Then in Bradford in the summer, PC Ingrid Cannon saw Yvonne again.
Sometime between June and September, I was driving an unmarked police car along Bertram Road when I saw Yvonne Fitt coming in the opposite direction. She was scurrying along a little bit like a frightened rabbit, really, as if she didn't really want to be seen. I was quite surprised to see Yvonne because I hadn't seen her for such a long time, and that's why she caught my attention.
It's not known if this really happened, but an anonymous caller rang police to say she'd seen Yvonne being bundled into a green van in Bertram Road. If that was you who called, please ring again.
I don't say that I like what she did or nothing, but I mean, it was Yvonne's life, and everybody choose the way of life they want. And nobody had no right taking her life from her. It was hers.
Tony Whittle, the people who are most likely to help are likely to be people who are pretty wary of calling in to the programme for pretty obvious reasons.
Yes,
I mean,
that's right.
frankly, if you were out there, would you ring in?
Well, I would, and the fact is that many people have contacted us. A number of those have made written statements which they've signed, and they've been very frank about their involvement with Yvonne, both in the drug scene and also in prostitution. Those individuals have had the confidence and the courage to contact us, and I would hope other people would follow that fine example.
Of course, you need to find out where she was between January and May. It's pretty critical, that.
It is, absolutely. She tended to stay with friends for 2 or 3 weeks and then move on. But no one can remember where she was during those crucial months.
OK, you want to know if she was in trouble with anyone. Obviously, you want to find out more about that green van, whether that was a hoax call or if that woman was for real. You need her to ring in.
We certainly do.
Again. What would anybody recognise about the assailant? I mean, are there any clues that anybody might, if they've got suspicions about a man?
Yes, there are some. I rather think the person responsible would never have expected the body to be found or identified. In the middle of September, the body was found, and at the end of September, it was identified as Yvonne Fitt. That person will have reacted in some way to that discovery, and someone may have picked up on that.
OK, well, if you can help in any way, the number here in the studio, 0818 118 181, or you can ring the Eccles Hill Police Station. That's direct on a free phone number, 0800 212 392. That's 0800 212 392.
But now with more cases on our incident desk, here are Superintendent David Hatcher and Detective Constable Jackie Hames.
A police check on the M6 near Penrith turned out to be more than just routine. The officers found 2 men who'd been bound and gagged, lying on their back seat of their car. Minutes earlier, they had been the victims of a robbery. It was 9:30 on Thursday evening, the 27th of August, and the businessmen had been travelling through Cumbria towards Glasgow when they were forced off the road by a blue 3 Series BMW. It happened a few miles north of the T-Bay services on the M6 motorway. 4 people got out of the BMW. One was a woman who threatened the passenger with a handgun. She was white, in her 40s, slim with blonde hair. At the same time, a man, also white and in his 40s, attacked the driver, smashing his window and punching him in the face, breaking his jaw. These robbers were joined by 2 black male accomplices, both masked, and the victims were forced to hand over jewellery worth £50,000. It's very distinctive and marked with 916 or RRJ. Have you been offered any? Or do you recognise the robbers? If so, call the incident desk direct on 0768 217 180.
Next tonight, an appalling sex attack on a 6-year-old girl. If you were in Bristol on Thursday afternoon, the 10th of September, you might have seen something. Brandon Hill is a large park area in the heart of the city centre and is a favourite place for many people to visit. At 5:30, a nanny brought 3 children here. After a picnic, they decided to play hide and seek. The game was to turn to horror as the little girl fell victim to a sex attack. We'd like to talk to this man who was seen in the area at the time. He was carrying a black camera and is around 5'10" with a slim build. He's in his late 30s, early 40s and has light brown hair which is greying at the sides. He was wearing a green cotton shirt and a brown bomber jacket. The child is now slowly recovering from her ordeal. If you think you recognise the man or can help, the incident room number is 0272 455 055.
Do you recognise these men? Police in Strathclyde would like to speak to them in connection with the murder of 33-year-old Abdul Manir in Helensburgh near Glasgow. Abdul had worked at the Lomond Tandoori restaurant in Sinclair Street since May. On Tuesday the 4th of August, he'd gone to work as usual. At about 6 p.m, he had to collect food from the store at the back of the restaurant. To get there, he had to walk through this alleyway. When he failed to return, a worried colleague went to look for him. Abdul had been stabbed. We're anxious to find 3 men who were seen in the area at the time. This man was seen at about 5:45. He's between 30 to 40, heavily built, with a moustache, and was wearing a black shirt. He was seen sitting in a silver or grey car parked opposite the restaurant. The second man is also 30 to 40 and about 5'10". He was wearing a white shirt and black trousers with a maroon bow tie and a brown or tan bomber jacket. He was walking along Sinclair Street between 5:30 and 6 p.m. The third man was seen about half an hour later. He's also 30 to 40, of medium build, with black hair and wore similar clothes. He was walking a few yards away from the restaurant at the junction of Sinclair Street and West Clyde Street. If you do know them, the incident room number is 0389 63311.
Gerard's menswear shop in Reigate High Street in Surrey was the scene of an unusual armed robbery on Thursday the 15th of October. Instead of money, the target was designer clothes. 4 men went into the shop just after opening time. They looked at the clothes and then one of the men pulled out a gun, threatening the manager. The staff could only watch as the clothes were bundled into sacks. Parked at the back of the shop was a white transit van waiting to take the goods away. The man with the gun was big, late 20s to early 30s and well over 6 foot tall. The second man was also tall and he too was well built. He looked scruffy. By the transit was in his mid-40s and once again broad-shouldered. The fourth member of the group was in his mid-20s and wore tortoise-shell glasses. He was smaller and slimmer than the others. All the clothing had one of these labels sewn inside. The men took nearly 300 items from overcoats to jeans. Perhaps you've been offered a Boss cashmere coat like this at a knockdown price. If you can help in any way, ring the police on 0737 765 040.
And of course, for all our cases tonight, you can ring the studio direct. Here's the number: 081 811 8181. 081 811 8181.
It takes an exceptionally callous man to shoot someone in cold blood, someone who's lying on the ground and offering no resistance. In fact, the crime we're showing next is so cold-hearted, police in Berkshire are hopeful calls will come from professional criminals, as well as more law-abiding viewers. In particular, there may well be a car thief watching who's not too keen on being charged with attempted murder. In Slough, last November, a Rover 820 SI was parked on a garage forecourt awaiting service.
At that point, I thought, just the customer. As he drove off, the boot flew open. He drove off at a very high speed, which I thought was very strange.
It wasn't the owner, and the car disappeared for 7 months.
Right, we'll load it up then.
Tuesday the 30th of June. It's a routine morning for Nick, a guard, custodian as they're called, for Security Express.
Good morning, Control. This is a radio check, over.
Receiving you loud and clear, over.
I joined the company 6 years ago. The route we were on that day is a route that I've done quite often. It's beautiful scenery, it's a good route, and I was working with a good team.
I was at the junction of Newbury Street. When the car went past me, I noticed it because it was red, it was very, very shiny, and you notice things like that in a small village like Lambourne. He was about late 30s, slightly tanned with a receding hairline. I followed him toward the centre of the village.
Meanwhile, the van had left the nearby village of Wantage and was heading for Barclays Bank in Lambourne.
You girls got the tennis on?
Well, I'd heard on the telephone that the van was on its way, and I didn't really want it to interrupt my lunch.
What game's this in? Is this a bets game?
You could be playing, it's your age group.
Thank you very much.
My attention really was on the television, although I was sat in the window looking over my shoulder, occasionally waiting for the van to arrive.
OK, John, let's have the money.
Come on, in the front. Christ, it's a rain. Dad! Hello, police emergency.
Their attention wasn't on us, it was on the van. So I felt perfectly safe, but completely distanced from the whole thing, as if it just really wasn't happening. It was only then I became aware of a pair of feet sticking out in front of the van. A couple of guys actually went over to the guard, as it turned out. But as they lifted him off the floor, the expression on his face was just total shock.
I didn't actually see the gun actually shoot me, but I just felt as though somebody kicked me in the leg really hard. And the pain was incredible. Initially I thought somebody just sort of kicked me. And then I actually went to put weight on my leg and it was like somebody driving a nail into it. It was absolutely terrible pain. I've sort of never experienced pain like it.
2 streets from the market square, a villager was calling in for fish and chips.
When I heard the sound of this high-revving engine, this guy was really going for it. Fairly well-built chap, black curly hair, thick moustache, round chubby face.
2 miles outside Lambourne, this witness was heading along Newbury Road.
It's 1:30, I noticed the car because it turned sharply into the hatchets. I noticed there was 2 figures in the front, and when the car stopped, I saw another car parked behind the hedge.
I haven't worked since I was shot. It could be a year until I'm back to work. People like this have got to be stopped.
Here's an impression of one of the robbers. He's in his mid to late 30s. Incidentally, there's a big reward on this one, £10,000 being offered by Security Express for information that leads to a conviction. The number here in the studio, as always, is 081 811 8181, or you can call the incident room in Newbury. That's the number there, 0635 31000, 0635, the code for Newbury, 31000. And do please persevere if the lines are busy. The number of people trying to ring the programme has actually doubled since the series first came on the air 8 years ago. We've put in quite a number of new lines. Even so, as I say, please keep trying.
The crime of rape is usually committed by someone who knows his victim. Indiscriminate rape is very rare. And even more rarely does a rapist attack more than one woman. Serial rapists are very unusual. But for the past 8 months, residents in the southeast London area have been living with the knowledge that a man like this is at large. Officers investigating this crime are absolutely committed to finding him, and they need your help because he has to be caught quickly. Our film begins with an incident only 9 weeks ago.
As I was getting closer to the bloke, I looked at him and I thought he was the person on the rapist posters that I'd seen in windows.
See that?
Yeah.
Me.
I've seen him. Seen who? The rapist, the ones the police are after. Are you all right?
Well, as soon as we heard the boy's description, we knew it was the man that we were looking for. The boy's description was really very good. We knew we were looking for a serial rapist, a man who had attacked 5 women in southeast London, the majority in the last 8 months. We regarded the boy's sighting as very significant.
Most of the attacks took place in or around the Green Chain Walk, which is a network of pathways in southeast London, stretching 39 miles from New Beckenham to the Thames Barrier. It's crisscrossed by fields and surrounded by trees and woodland. The first attack was back in 1989, just yards from the Plumstead part of Green Chain Walk.
Well, I told myself I wasn't going to let this man beat me. I wasn't going to get angry. I did think about selling my house, but then I thought, why should I? But even though it happened 3 years ago, it still feels like it was yesterday. I got up in the morning, went downstairs, made a cup of tea, let the cat out. It was a nice day, so I left the back door open. And I went upstairs and dried my hair. And my door started to open, and there was a man standing there. He was medium build, with mousy hair. I thought it was a burglar at first, and he pulled out a knife. And then something made me realise that he wasn't a burglar.
For the next 2.5 years, there seem to have been no more attacks. Then in Lewisham in March this year.
What actually struck me about that attack was the level of violence. It really was quite frightening. It was immediate and it was so unnecessary. The man had a knife, which he threatened the victim with, but she offered no resistance, and yet still he inflicted quite horrendous injuries. That attack took place some considerable time after the 1989 incident, and so we had no real reason to connect it at this stage.
Just 8 days after that attack, the man attempted to rape again, this time 3.5 miles away in Eltham, in a field facing Green Chain Walk.
By now we began to suspect that we were dealing with the same man. The big question was, where was this man between August of 1989 and March of this year? The description of this man from all our victims told us that we were looking for a white man. He was aged between 19 and 30. We are told that he had a particularly pale, almost gaunt expression, and that there were marks on his chin. He had brown, collar-length hair, often lank and unkempt, and that his teeth were discoloured and uneven, and in particular, the front two. We then had a dilemma as to how was this man travelling. There had been no sightings of cars or bicycles, so we had to consider, was he travelling on foot or by one of the many buses in that area, and in particular, the Route 21 appeared to go through the majority of our scenes.
I was going to a barbecue to a relative's with my boyfriend and my little girl, and I was really looking forward to it.
Just go in the off classes, I'll catch you up. Right.
My daughter really enjoys going there because she's got a swimming pool and slide and toys. I knew the area very well because I grew up around that area, and I'd done a sports day on them fields. You know, I see this man with his back to me, and I wasn't worried at all, didn't think anything of it. Just walked straight past him. After it all happened, I was so dazed, where it hit me so much. I sat up and I jumped up, grabbed the buggy and walked down the lane, but I could hardly walk. So if the buggy wasn't there, there's no way I would have got up. It's because my little girl was sitting there, I had to get up and do something about it.
This man is clearly an extreme risk taker. He has struck almost oblivious to the chances of him being caught or even being seen. In addition, that he struck on a Sunday makes me think that perhaps he's working, that he's employed somewhere. And what worries me most of all is that this violence appears to be increasing with each attack.
Three days later, only yards from that last attack, this young woman was taking her dogs to obedience classes.
The training school wasn't open, so I thought I'd wait for the dog trainer. And I stepped out to see if she was coming, and there was this man down the lane. Didn't think anything of it, and as I stepped back to the dogs, he was a short distance away from me.
Well, John Pearce, that was at the end of May. Have there been any attacks since then?
Well, we've actually investigated it a great many incidents, but we're particularly interested in one that takes us back to Woolwich, takes us back to Wynn Common on Monday the 12th of October. Shortly after 10 o'clock at night, we have a young mother pushing her child in a buggy. She's concerned about a man in front of her and quite wisely seeks some help from a couple in a car nearby. We think that the actions of that couple in the car clearly prevented a far more serious incident.
You need to talk to that couple then.
We'd dearly like this couple to come forward. We don't know a great deal about the car, except that the interior light was on and there was a man in the passenger seat and a man in the driving seat and the woman in the passenger seat.
And that was October the 12th. What do you think might explain the interval of 2.5 years in his activities between the attacks?
Well, we strongly believe that this man is known to police, but he's displayed an intimate knowledge of South East London. This may be because he was brought up in the area or went to school there, but it still leaves a large gap.
Well, I just hope somebody can help you find him tonight. Just to recap on his description, he has brown collar-length hair, which is lank and unkempt. He's pale and gaunt looking. His teeth are discoloured and uneven. There may be some marks or scars on his chin. The vaguest aspect of the description is his age, which has been put at anything between 19 and 30. If you've encountered this man, or if you know who or where he is, please do ring us. There are BBC researchers here to speak to if you prefer. The studio number is 081 811 8181, or you can ring the officers direct in the incident room at Eltham Police Station, and that's 081 853 8212. That's 081 853 8212.
There really is so much information coming in tonight that it's almost impossible to bring you up to date with it properly. Photocall, I mean, this is just a few calls that have come in on one case in the last 5 minutes. We've got very strong evidence now coming in on nearly all the photocall cases. Suggestions that Yvonne Fitt, who was murdered, was in a psychiatric hospital for the 5 months she was missing. There are other possibilities about where she was then. A possible identity for the man in the pub. A man who's given information that seems highly reliable has called in and given a code name unless police want to talk to him again. We'll be back later on with much more information, I think, tonight. Sue.
And the number, if you know anything about any of our cases tonight, 081 811 8181. Our lines are going to be open until midnight. There's another number I'd like to give you, one which you might like to take down for reference. This month, Customs and Excise have launched a drugs line which is aimed mainly at people who may themselves use drugs but are worried by unscrupulous dealers or about anything they consider dangerous. The line is free, so you can speak to somebody in confidence and you may save lives. The number's 0800 59 5000. That's 0800 59 5000. As for our phones here in the studio, detectives will be acting on the information as it comes in tonight, and we'll hopefully have more news for you in an hour and a half's time.
That's Crime Watch Update at 11:15. If you can't stay up till then, and who can blame you, let me reassure you that your chances of encountering the sort of crimes we've shown in reconstructions really are very, very small indeed. As the new British Crime Survey shows, most crimes are very minor ones, so don't have nightmares, do sleep well. Good night.
Good night.